now. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just get it. Right. Okay, so today's event is to give you all a regional overview of area hydrogen developments, look at how businesses are increasingly using hydrogen, and also some of the area skills options. So we have got a really jam-packed agenda, some fantastic speakers, but just a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. So presentations will be shared after the event, and we're also recording the event in order to raise greater awareness, and that will be shared. Do put any questions you have in the chat. These will be picked up as part of the panel. Also, you can share your contact details if you've joined and you want to raise awareness of yourselves. Also, if you can keep your mics on mute and your video turned off, just to help with the flow of the event, apart from if you're actually a speaker. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our excellent chair, Dennis Hayter, the Head of External Affairs at Intelligent Energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, and welcome to you all who have recently joined, and to those that are the speakers, presenters at this afternoon's event. This is very much around how the hydrogen economy, hydrogen technologies, implementation of net zero and the like is going to play into the future. It's also fundamentally around the skills and capabilities that are going to be needed. So by way of background, hydrogen, it's a fuel, provides for zero emission if you utilize it in technology that's based on a fuel cell stack. Hydrogen itself is a naturally occurring element, but it's a very small proportion of the atmosphere, and you need to achieve the provision of the hydrogen that would go into a fuel cell stack together with air. So typically it's through electrolysis or other forms of creating green, brown, pink forms of hydrogen. But the key thing is, and to the next slide, please. The key thing is that, that as it comes from a fuel cell, which is based on an electrochemical reaction, it's not around combustion at this point, that gives you zero emission power. So continuous power for as long as you provide the hydrogen and the air. And as I say, no combustion involved with the fuel cell. It's electrochemical, but hydrogen internal combustion engines are part of the pathways that are being used in order to help reduce the carbon content. It can still be zero carbon, but there may be NOx and some other small components of emissions involved. And the next slide, please. To give you some examples of how that technology is being implemented, around the use of the fuel cell and the hydrogen as a fuel. We have plenty of examples of drones. As a company based in Loughborough, we are one of the largest suppliers of the fuel cells that are used by drone operators in the UK, but the vast majority are actually going into international marketplaces. So you can see there over the ground surveying for filming of events over the water, can be anywhere, could be racetrack, or in industrial applications where you're monitoring and surveying. Sites, pipelines, power lines, there could be many, many different applications that are being used and will continue to be used into the future. And the next slide, please, will take us to hydrogen-powered flight. So it's not just about drones, it will go into the likes of, and we've already tried with small single-seater aircraft through to larger aircraft. That started back in 2008 with Boeing and will continue into the future, whether it be for so-called air taxis or up to 90-seat aircraft into the future. So that is also a part of the pathway for decarbonising the aviation sector, and also seeing how hydrogen will be utilised in and around airports and the like. And I would expect that we'll have a bit more to say, given that East Midlands Airport is in the area and will be utilising other forms of hydrogen and fuel cell technology for powering mobile equipment in and around the airport, as well as powering the aircraft itself. On the ground, if you can, yes, this is something that is actually from back in 2011-12, to give the indication that this is not new. It's been happening for a while. These were fuel cell taxis that were running during the Olympics as part of the VIP fleet for the Lord Mayor at that time and for his teams. And next slide, that takes us on to where else can you use it apart from in vehicles. It's currently being used in railway, in trucks, in buses, and also indoors. So in material handling equipment, in factories, up mountains. The middle image there is actually providing power into a feedlot and milking parlour for cattle in the southern French Alps. And then, as I say, around in factories, so powering material handling equipment or guided vehicles, automated guided vehicles. And next slide. So this, in that context, is in the skills side and the requirements. It could be involved in constructing, implementing, integrating, operating the vehicles, the powertrain. It could be in refueling. Little images for hydrogen refueling for part of that fleet of taxis. And it could be in rocket science. The liquid hydrogen, together with oxygen, has been used as the propellant for getting spaceships up into the air. So in the context of today being the day that NASA has launched its rocket to the moon, then you may be involved, and there may be requirements that spread right across all of those areas and other areas as well. So that's a starter. And I can now welcome Will Morledge as the Chief Executive of the D2N2, and also specifically the Midlands Hydrogen Partnership. It's a partnership that you will see there's a lot of activity, many other companies that are involved, and that this is a cluster that is driving some of the activities for the East Midlands, Leicester and Leicestershire as well as D2N2. Thank you, and Will, over to you.
Thanks, Dennis. Sorry, just struggling to unmute there. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Anna, for the invite. Hi, everyone. I'm Will. I'm the Chief Exec at the Derby, Derbyshire, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Local Enterprise Partnership. But they've let me across the border this afternoon because when it comes to talking about energy and infrastructure and skills, the local authority borders are really not that important to us. And that's absolutely the case when we're talking about hydrogen, because for us, the natural geography of hydrogen is about where the supply, the demand and the transmission is, not who's chief exec of what, frankly. So I'm delighted that my other role is co-chair of East Midlands Hydrogen with Sally Brewis from Cadent, many of you may know. And it is a partnership that crosses borders, as we'll see in a sec. So Dennis has kind of covered why hydrogen. I'm going to cover why here. And the East Midlands Partnership, Hydrogen Partnership, has come together as a collection of businesses with overlapping interests in different aspects of the hydrogen economy. And the 7 things that every member of the partnership is involved in one or more of these 7 issues. I won't slavishly go through it because you'll get the slides after the event. But in short, it's about how do we produce and store hydrogen here in the East Midlands, not have to rely on the coast or overseas. It's about how do we move that hydrogen from A to B, whether that's through pipelines or through tankers and potentially trains in the future. It's about encouraging businesses and other organisations to switch, if you're using natural gas as a heating source or power source, to switch to using hydrogen. That's obviously predicated on us producing and moving it around. So point 3 depends on point 1 and 2 very heavily. It's also about ensuring that as we plan for the future of where housing and business and transport hubs are going to be, that actually we're factoring in hydrogen as a potential fuel source for that. And I'm really delighted that the whole of Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire will have local area energy plans, which are not something that the government requires areas to have, but the areas that have done energy plans are starting to take 10-15% out of the cost of major infrastructure developments. So it feels a no-brainer, and I'd be amazed if it's not a statutory part of the planning system within the next decade. So we're ahead of the game there. It's also about growing the education and skills offering around hydrogen. That's in schools, in colleges, in universities, and for adults, because we know at the minute that we don't have enough people going through the skill system to get the hydrogen jobs that we think we need to do all that production and storage, etc. Nor do we have enough trainers. Even if we had the students and the courses, we don't yet have enough trainers to actually deliver some of that. So I'm really pleased that Rachel Quinn from the IO, the Institute of Technology, is here, because she is leading one of the very flagship projects around how we turn that skills juggernaut around. And finally, the last two items are around freight decarbonisation. Well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? We've mentioned the airport. 80% of the freight of the country goes through the Midlands. There is a huge amount of interest in east-west travel across the A50, etc. at the minute. And so taking the carbon, yes, out of the manufacture of those lorries, but also out of the operations of the logistics sector is absolutely crucial. But as East Midlands Hydrogen, we don't lead on that. We port people through to our colleagues at Midlands Connect. Then that's, if you've not met Midlands Connect, they're Department for Transport's regional strategic body. And they do some really interesting stuff around hydrogen. And finally, in terms of promoting hydrogen tech to companies, again, we take a keen interest, but we don't claim to do that. We would, if a business comes to me and says, I need some help developing X, we will always pass those guys over to the relevant university or one of the regional bodies like Hydex or the Energy Research Accelerator. So that's, I promise you, Anna, that is the longest I'll spend on any one slide. Next, please. So why here and why now? So I don't expect you to be able to read this map, but I think if you just glance at it, the point we're getting across here is there is a massive amount of demand for hydrogen in our region. And here, we're very loose with what we mean by East Midlands. Yes, it's Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, it's most of Leicestershire. Actually, it's part of Staffordshire as well. And if you kind of draw a ring around the airport, say a 20-mile ring around the airport, there's just that enormous cluster of potential users of hydrogen, many of whom, as you'll see in a subsequent slide, kind of signed up to say, if you produce it, we will use it. And that's one of the key messages we're trying to get to government. The demand is here. You may be producing most of it at the coast, but we need it here. So how are we going to make that work? Worth just mentioning that one of the useful assets that the East Midlands has got is these three new or newish organisations, the Freeport, the Development Company and the Institute of Technology, all of which have got government backing to deliver on specific pieces of what we need. So the Freeport can stimulate business investment. The Development Company can assemble and get land built on quickly. And as I've mentioned, the IoT is about what new skills does the region need. So nobody else has got a confluence of those kind of assets that we've got. Next slide, please. So I mentioned demand, and this is work that Cadent did on behalf of the partnership. And when they talked to the top 20 consumers of natural gas in that East Midlands region, who between them own around 70 sites, they got a demand forecast of over 10 terawatt hours by 2040, which, as you'll see from the graph, is almost 5 times what they think it'll be in 2030. So this is a power source that's going to be needed for a while, and we're going to have to scale up production, storage, transmission, no end. But really exciting that businesses here are basically saying, you can bring us the hydrogen, we will use it. Next slide, please. And in the other side of the coin, around production, we are aware of plans for around 650 megawatts of production here inland in the region. And when you get a chance to skip back to that map of the assets, you'll see there are 6 former coal-fired power stations along the Trent and the Derwent mean, those places have got massive grid connections. Why would you not repurpose them for the production of green power? But they're not the only sites. There's one of the really interesting things to East Midlands hydrogen is how many SMEs we've come across who are trialing different approaches to electrolysis or anaerobic digestion or whatever it happens to be. So many different techs that could be part of the solution for hydrogen. We're not saying hydrogen is the solution for every business in every place, but within the hydrogen sphere itself, electrolysis, which is the main technology at the minute, will not be the solution for every place. And maybe we'll get to a point where every dairy farm on the country is doing something really interesting with an anaerobic digester that's producing hydrogen. Well, let's well, no, I was going to say let's hope. No, let's not hope. Let's just make it happen. Next slide, please. In terms of why is the LEP involved? Well, across the two LEP areas and that little bit of Staffordshire, we're talking about a massive amount of potential business growth in the region, new jobs, new businesses, and many jobs being protected. So people will need to upskill from old gas industries to new hydrogen industries. We don't want to lose those people from the workforce. We want to retrain them and upskill them. So massive potential wherever you are in your career, I think. Next slide, please. In terms of the environmental benefit, I'm not sure if Sally from Cadence on the call, but I always get a bit nervous because this is her stat. But it's a massive amount of carbon sequestrated, and effectively, we can sequester by switching to hydrogen the equivalent of all the domestic emissions of the East Midlands region. It's kind of mind-boggling environmental turnaround, which is great when you consider just how dirty, frankly, our region is, given that we were the kind of heart of the Industrial Revolution. We've been building things and digging things out of the ground for so long. We've got a long journey to turn things around, and it's just fantastic that we can repurpose some of those assets to be part of that net zero journey. Next one, please, Anne. And just in terms of current activity, what are we doing? Well, the first thing we're doing is trying not to duplicate. So if you're doing something and you want us to stop because you're worried we're going to step on your toes, let me know. That is absolutely not what we're about. We're about amplifying people's messages, plugging gaps, and sharing best practice. So we're supporting a number of bids at the minute. There's loads of funding streams out there that are specifically about hydrogen or could have a hydrogen link to them. So earlier this week, I was with the University of Nottingham and Loughborough talking about innovation in hydrogen storage, potential £2.5 million investment in the region there. But as you'll know, if you're on this call, funding from government for innovation appears to be fired out of Whitehall in a blunderbuss and just scatters so widely that trying to put a net around it and bring it back together in the regions is quite a task. We're also working with the Freeport, with Rachel at the IoT to better understand the skills ecosystem that's needed and to try and get it in place. We're working with, in the Deeside Entry area, the Future Combined Authority, but equally in the Leicestershire area with city and county authorities to develop a shared vision around how we make this East Midlands picture work. And really pleased that the plans are getting quite advanced now for the development of the East Coast Hydrogen Pipeline. That's the thing that would pipe hydrogen from the Humber, where lots of it will be made. Some of it will be imported, some of it will be made there. But eventually that pipeline will go down across to Sheffield and then through to Northampton, going through Derby, Leicester and Nottingham and Loughborough. So a real potential game changer for this region in terms of a steady, guaranteed supply of hydrogen. And that is it. I don't think I quite made 5 minutes, Anna, but not bad.
It's okay, you're still to time.
And thank you very much, Will. That's very illuminating, and it certainly puts it in context of the number of activities that there are out there, those that are involved, both on the supply side, use side, operation side. And moving on then to MIRA Technology Park. And welcome, Sarah. Thank you. You're going to take us through the MIRA Technology Park, the way in which it's using its history, its connections with both the automotive side, but also development around technology pathways. been doing that since way back from 1946, when it was the home of the Motor Industry Research, the UK Motor Industry Research Association, and now looking at the vehicle technologies, propulsion systems, energy storage, which is also becoming more important. It's not just about creating fuels and alternative fuels, but how you use them, utilize them, store them, repurpose, and repower and refuel. And also, of course, you've got quite a lot of the skill side, looking at how you train those that are involved. So over to you. Thank you, Sarah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dennis. Yeah, can I have the first slide, please? Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. And yeah, as Dennis has said, for those of you who don't know MIRA, we have been around for a number of years. Started as the Motor Industry Research Association, so a partnership with government and industry, all around keeping sovereign technical capability, particularly in vehicles, obviously post World War II. So our site on the Leicestershire-Warwickshire border, and I was really pleased with what Will was saying about the importance of cross local authority geographies, because that is absolutely how we work. We're East and West Midlands indeed. But yeah, our site was obviously formerly an RAF base. It was chosen because it was a lovely flat piece of land. So yeah, if you've been there, you'll know what I mean. And we were awarded Enterprise Zone status. So we're an engineering and testing facility, but we are also a technology park. So we have a number of tenants on the park, and that's really where our hydrogen story has started. And in 2015, we were acquired by the Hydex Group. And I mention that because Hydex, again, for those of you who don't know, manufacturers of scientific testing and analysis equipment, and very much in the hydrogen value chain, but not as much in the UK at the moment. They're doing a lot of that work in Germany. So again, part of the opportunity here is to bring more of that work in. Apologies, I didn't realise this has got an animation of things. If you just skip through it, it should all come up. But yeah, this was just to highlight how we have the blend of engineering and testing facilities across the whole of future mobility. Can you skip on? Brilliant, thank you very much. So yeah, so this is the technology park and our kind of unique campus. So the technology park is the team that I work for, and what's really interesting about this site, as I say, you've got that kind of core vehicle development expertise around the skills, the engineering, and the test facilities. But then alongside that, you've got this cluster of businesses, and I'll go on talking in a minute about how increasingly those businesses are moving into areas of clean tech, hydrogen, and fuel cells, and a range of different areas beyond mobility. And then around that, what we've got is the investments that we're making in infrastructure, and particularly in providing a sustainable carbon neutral location as a technology park. So we've got tenants working on net zero transport technologies. We want to be able to complement that with a sustainable location. And for those of you who were at the event yesterday, I just wanted to point out actually, when I've looked at the investment that our tenants have raised since we became an enterprise zone, which was in 2012, that 6 billion is actually 22 billion over the course of the last 12 years. So yeah, 22 billion in dollars in private investment raised by our tenants on the park. We obviously can't take all the credit for that, but that shows that the ecosystem that we provide is exactly the right place for stimulating some of these new technologies and really commercializing them and bringing them to market. And also obviously very strong collaboration with Innovate UK in that respect as well, and I'll come on to talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. Can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, so this is our technology cluster. At the moment, we've got 1.6 million square foot of specialised R&D space across the technology park. I've mentioned our vehicle engineering and testing facilities, and 40 global tenants. But really important for this call in that we've got this buildup of hydrogen technology developers, and I think for me that's the bit that's really important in this ecosystem, is the development of the innovation. It was great to hear Will talking about that as one of the key pillars, because it is really important that we do stimulate this new technology and new innovation in hydrogen in order to really benefit from it. So that's just a selection of some of the tenants that we've got working on hydrogen from hydrogen vehicles, so heavy goods vehicles, working on hydrogen buses, working on hydrogen as energy. So Ceres are looking at very much as a clean fuel cell technology for energy, for data centers, industry and things like that. And then obviously you've got companies like Teva and Viratech that are looking at the energy management systems of vehicles, and that's the range of vehicles where hydrogen it really makes sense. Not everything can be battery electric, so we need to be able to offer a different option, particularly on the freight and commercial vehicles. Can I have the next slide? Very much. So off the back of having this cluster of really crucial hydrogen technology developers, we're obviously making our own investments in order to make sure that we provide the ecosystem that they need. So we've got a range of hydrogen ready vehicle development facilities, which is unique. There are other sites like ours across Europe aren't doing the same thing. So we're really making ourselves a site where you can develop hydrogen vehicles and battery electric and biofuel, e-fuel, whatever the next generation of those net zero vehicles is going to be. So we're investing very much in hydrogen ready facilities there, but also in our own hydrogen infrastructure. And I think this is where this might be relevant to people on the call if you've got you're on an industrial estate or a technology park like ours. So we've got a solar array going in, thanks to Leicestershire LLEP and their support with this investment. We've got a solar array going in that can't connect to the grid until 2029. So what are we going to do with all this renewable energy that we can store some of it, but battery technology and storage is also quite expensive, and we can also turn some of it into green hydrogen. So that's what we're looking to do from the summer of this year through electrolysis, as you've heard Dennis talk about. So that'll be exciting when that all is ready and comes online. And again, that's very much been a partnership approach with our tenants around understanding what it is that they need and what they're looking for, and also, as I said, with Leicestershire LLEP's support as well in terms of the investment in the infrastructure that's needed to produce that. But certainly that's where I know there's a few technology parks and sites in the region that are interested in how we're doing that and want to come and have a look and potentially learn from it as well in their own sites. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of tenants in particular. So this is Viratech, who have been successful in a number of Innovate UK grants in their hydrogen fuel cell technology. So they don't develop the vehicle, they are a tier one supplier into vehicle manufacturers. They do the zero emission powertrain, but their whole process is around making that as light as it possibly can be in order to ensure that it can be used in a variety of different circumstances, particularly when you're talking about freight, when you're talking about payloads and commercial return. That's all really important that we look at how heavy those vehicles are and what it is that they can carry. And again, it's been great that Hydex, MIRA and the engineering and testing have been able to work very closely with Viratech. And I know we have on skills as well, but I'm not going to steal Lisa's thunder. I'm going to let her cover that a bit later. Can I have the next slide, please?
Before you start, Sarah, you are at your 3-minute warning, if that's okay.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire. Thank you. I knew I would always, I've got so much great stuff happens at MIRA. I've always got so much to say. So thank you for keeping me to time. So this is, I wanted to mention Sarah's in particular because this is hydrogen beyond mobility. As I mentioned, Sarah's looking particularly at how you bring this clean technology, how you make it efficient, and affordable in the power market, particularly around data centers. So again, they're a great success story from the technology part perspective. Can I have the next slide, please? So yeah, I just wanted to really briefly mention Hariba because they are our parent company, but also a global player in the hydrogen ecosystem. And this is just a bit of an overview of the different areas that they work in. But again, really keen to kind of bring them more into this conversation, particularly linking with some of the stuff that's happening with East Midlands Hydrogen and investment in innovation, because it's certainly an area that they are particularly interested in. I think the next slide is skills, so I can skip that because Lisa's going to cover that for us. And then the final one is just about our south site. This is our Warwickshire part of the site, which has received outline planning consent for development of 2.4 million square foot. So that will take our whole site to over 4 million square foot. And the whole idea is that we're able to offer this incubator to production all on one site, all with the ecosystem surrounding it that I've talked about. And again, we're looking at how we really make sure that site is net zero from the start. So yeah, really keen to engage with companies who are in that clean tech innovation ecosystem and would like to benefit from what we've got to offer at the technology park. That's it. I'm done. I think I've just about kept to time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sarah. And an interesting anecdote. You've shown a whole lot of the different activities. I can recall back to the high-speed curve bowl that is used for vehicle testing. After the fuel cell taxis had finished one of them had finished its run for the 2012 Olympics, it went to the LCV event where one of the ministers from London thought, this is terrific, can I have a lift back to the station, please? Yeah, no problem. Oh, but can I try it on that high-speed track? This was a minister who was reasonably well known for being very voluble about different activities. When the taxi reached 98 miles an hour, he went quite white and very quiet. So you also get the ability to show the technology in forms of operation that people would not necessarily expect, and that it's can be very safe when you do so as well. So, but in that context, everything that you've said, having been a user, been aware of, having worked with others to do testing. So you've done quite a lot of testing of fuel cells in some of your special chambers, wind chambers as well. I can only say this is an excellent way. And if there is a way to encourage people to look at how to collaborate with you around the skill side, and also with Lisa as well, then I would strongly encourage it. So thank you, Sarah. And I can now move from automotive to introduce David, Head of Sustainability at Forterra. Forterra being one of the companies that is a key developer, the key operator, builder, manufacturer of building materials, and how I've been looking at using the hydrogen as an alternative to decarbonize, reduce CO2 costs, and maintain capability around building material production. So over to you, David. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dennis. As I said, I'm Head of Sustainability at Forterra. I've got 35 years experience within the business. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to Forterra, tell you a little bit about the scale of the net zero challenge, the options we're looking at, and also explain opportunities for this and the first steps that we've taken in the use of hydrogen. We employ about 1,500 people across the UK, Next slide, please. We've got some brands that hopefully you all recognise. On the brick side of things, the Butterley business has been established in the Leicestershire area for almost 100 years. We found it on an Ordnance Survey map going back to 1928, so we've been around a while. You might also recognise our Thermalite brand in blocks and the Red Bank and Bison Precast brands within our bespoke products ranges. Next slide, please. As I said, national business, so a few sites in the Leicestershire area. Next, please. And I guess as a business, being sustainable is very important. After all, the products we make last for well over 100 years and generally get passed from generation to generation. So we're very passionate about sustainability, and today the focus is on hydrogen, which is a key lever in us achieving the CO2 targets that you see on the screen. So within our clay products business, we're looking to try and achieve a 33% reduction in carbon per tonne by 2030, based on 2019. And one of the key levers there, like I say, will be hydrogen. Next slide, please. So in terms of our carbon footprint, as a business last year, it's about 260,000 tonnes. About 45% of that relates to natural gas. Roughly 45% is process emissions. And this is when the clay goes into the kiln, we heat it and it gives off CO2 from the carbonates, etc., that are in the clays. There's some emissions from liquid fuels, so diesel for distribution fleet and mobile plant, and then our electricity usage. Next slide. So what are our opportunities? So I guess easiest one to address is electricity. We've recently signed a corporate PPA, which will provide us with 70% of our electricity from a solar farm that's basically being built to service our needs. So that was something we were able to do fairly early on. Represents about 8% of our carbon footprint. The rest of it gets a lot trickier. So when we look at liquid fuels, you're looking electric vehicles or hydrogen fuel cells. Process emissions, this is probably the most difficult area. We've been doing some work on carbon capture, and what we've found is it's very difficult and very, very expensive. The initial work we've done, we've recently upgraded the Desford factory, which, just to confuse everyone on the call, is actually near Bagworth, not Desford. We've recently just rebuilt that factory, and the carbon capture plant would be 10% more expensive than actually building a new factory. So you're looking at the best part of 100 million to build a carbon capture plant for a brickworks, which scary numbers. And then the other thing that we've been looking at with East Coast Hydrogen and East Midlands Hydrogen is replacing natural gas. The options there, been looking at biomass, but there's certain issues around sustainability credentials. It's acceptable at the moment, but will it be acceptable in the 2030s? Electrification. Electrification's fine for a small scale kiln, but the sort of kilns that we're making, because our Desford factory, we produce enough bricks to build 25,000 homes a year, or we will do when it's fully operational. So realistically, the only real option is hydrogen. And to a degree, hydrogen is almost plug and play, because we can use the same kilns. We'll have to change the burners, but there's a few other things that we'll possibly have to modify. And we're doing a bit of investigation work on what that actually looks like at the moment. So next slide, please. Yeah, I was getting a bit ahead of myself. So this is like where we believe we can get to with hydrogen. So kilns, mobile plant. We've done some work with looking at electric vehicles for forklifts. But as soon as you talk to an electric forklift company and tell them you want an 8-ton forklift, they go very, very quiet, because I think up to 5 ton is doable, but we shift heavy product around, and 8 tonnes is a challenge. But I think we've got the first 8 tonne one in the UK at one of our factories. And it seems to be working quite well. But like most electric stuff, it's very expensive to buy in the first place. And then finally, in the future, we're hoping our distribution fleet again can switch to hydrogen. And I think if we can convert those 3 uses to hydrogen, we can probably achieve about a 55% reduction in our carbon footprint. Next slide. So what have we been doing? I guess one of the reasons why we've got so involved with hydrogen is, as a PLC, we've got a risk register. And on that risk register, it came up that the government were looking at putting 20% hydrogen into the gas network. And immediately it's kind of, everyone says, it'll be fine. You'll hardly notice any difference. But what we don't want to do is get to whenever they decide to do it and find that we can no longer make our products. Or if we can, they're a different colour, because that would be a bit of a disaster. So what we did is, in partnership with Air Products, we installed about 6 megawatts of hydrogen in the form of maxi packs. So each one of those maxi packs is about a megawatt. Those 6 bottles there will run a small batch kiln for 2 firings, because it takes about 2 days to get up to temperature to fire the bricks. And we installed a blending unit which was connected to the natural gas unit network so that we could blend in 20%. So next slide.
David, just before you start, you're at your 3-minute warning.
Cool, that's perfect. This is the kiln that we set up to run on 20%. It will hold about 8,000 bricks, so that's about 1 house. And what we found, it was the dullest trial ever, because everything came out exactly as we'd hoped and expected. Images at the bottom are for when we ran it initially on 5% hydrogen, because we wanted to ramp up gradually. And the difference you can see in the 2 bricks at the back is the shadow from the brick at the front, as opposed to actually being a different colour. So unfortunately, it's a pretty rubbish photo. So that's kind of what we've done on the 20% blending side of things. And then if you go to the next slide. And I guess the challenges for us, which I guess are the opportunities for the hydrogen sector and the people who will be delivering it to us, is at the moment we have long investment cycles. A new kiln is expected to last for about 25-30 years. When you speak to equipment providers, at the moment there's no off-the-shelf solutions. We finished the Desford plant last year. It was the grand reopening. Work started on building that in 2017, so it takes a long while to build a brickworks. There's issues around the supply of hydrogen, and also the work that other people are doing. It's the scale of the trials. Our trade association been working with Glass Futures, and there's some images there of some bricks that were fired on 100% hydrogen. Again, it worked, but it was a very small kiln, very small trial, and it was brought up to temperature using natural gas and only soaked using the hydrogen. So that's the problems on the infrastructure side. Product side, we're worried about colour change because of the different temperatures, issues with compressive strength and frost resistance. Probably the biggest change that we would be looking at would be refractories, because of the extra moisture that's potentially in the flame, from the flame. And from an operational point of view, because of the increased temperature, there is the chance that we'd have to decrease the setting density, so put less bricks in a kiln to give a bigger space to allow the flame to go down between the product, and then potentially increase volumes of gas. That's the other bit we're really not sure about, because of the energy content of hydrogen per metre cubed. The next slide, which is my last one, so hopefully I'm on time. So what we would like to do next is 100% hydrogen trial. That's a slightly small, well, a much smaller kiln, but we need a new control system and a new burner. And at the moment, we got quoted about £250,000 to do it, which is a lot of money for a very small kiln. Hopefully I've stuck to me 10 minutes because Anna didn't think I could do it with all those slides. So yeah, that's me. Oh.
David, there is a quick comment in the chat, which I'll feed back to you after the meeting, okay? Sorry,
Cool.
Dennis, for jumping in there.
That's okay. But thank you to you, David, for the punctuality. It's much appreciated, and I should have said the same thing for Sarah earlier on as well. Thank you. And moving now, and I think that David, you mentioned dull trials, but dull trials can be some of the best trials, because they do all of the things that you recognised and don't throw up further challenges. But it looks also as if you've still got quite a few challenges that you need to work with. Availability of hydrogen is an issue. And perhaps, as Will was pointing to, when you're able to get pipeline delivery, or you're able to find other ways in which you can generate more hydrogen on site locally, through electrolysis if necessary, then that's only good news for lots of other people. Moving now to Rachel, we're talking now about East Midlands Institute of Technology, and as you've pointed out, this is it's an ability to be able to look across higher education down to more specific skills, qualifications in line with regional economic need. And given the diversity of activities, it looks like you've got quite a lot of regional need. And so over to you in terms of how are you going to achieve that and deliver that?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to what the Institute of Technology is and what it isn't actually, and how we're transitioning into hydrogen and broader energy transition sectors across the East Midlands. So the first thing to note is Institutes of Technology, they've been around a little while, about 5 years. We're a relatively new one. We're not formally launching until September this year. Having said that, the Institutes of Technology are purely a wrapper. So we exist to bring an element of coherence and coordination across existing good practice in education. And actually you'll hear us kind of similar approach from Lisa at MTI following this particular segment. And it's absolutely crucial, because what we need to do at this point, the pace of technology driving economies in local areas is accelerating at such a rate that if we don't start to align education provision with that technological change and allow ourselves to really make education an enabler and not something that comes later down the line and therefore be a lag to development, it's just so important. So that's what we exist for. We're government backed, we're building some new buildings, we're doing some stuff, but essentially we're taking that partnership and making it more effective. If I can have the next slide, please. There are 21 across the country, and the link in this particular slide will take you forward. So in terms of the East Midlands Institute of Technology, from a core education partnership, we are a blend of Loughborough and Derby colleges and universities. Both Loughborough and Derby University with some really strong basis around energy management, production and innovation. So there's a really good footprint there, and Loughborough working really strongly with the University of Nottingham as well around hydrogen technologies. So we've got that, you know, existing within the education infrastructure. We've got those high level skills that will enable the thinking and the transition towards hydrogen. The purpose of the Institute of Technology is to then start trickling that down and saying, okay, as a country, we don't create enough technical skills or enough people making transition into technical roles and opportunities. and we're not necessarily upskilling that workforce quickly enough to take on board these new technologies. So the real core purpose of the Institute of Technology is to work with industry, and you can see here the mix of our core industry partners, but we're always looking to talk to anybody and everybody who wants to particularly focus on technology skills and what's really changing in our economic footprint and how can we support that to happen more effectively through education. But as you can see here, we've got a really strong emphasis not just on sort of the planes, trains, automobiles that we have heavily across the East Midlands, but very much around digital transition and around energy production, management and storage across the region. And that's becoming a really embedded theme for us. If we can have the next slide, please. So the delivery of the Institute of Technology is really about creating more take-up of engineering, digital and professional construction pathways across the East Midlands. And in particular, what would have been considered, what is those level 4 and level 5. So higher technical skills, what in old money would be HNCs, HND type levels, in kind of higher level apprenticeship type activity. But in order to do that, it's really important that you're encouraging entry from level 3 A levels and T levels through into those higher level skills, and you've got opportunities for specialist upskilling at higher levels. So we span a pathway from that level 3 right up to master's level activity across all of our partnership, and over time that is evolving. Much of it is existing, delivery pathways, but what we're looking to do is really make sure that those pathways align really strongly. So what does all that mean for hydrogen? If we can have the next slide, please. So we've been, and Will's already alluded to this, we've been working really closely with Hydex, and it's nice to see Catherine on the call today, but also with the Freeport to think about future energy skills for the region with a particular focus on hydrogen. The Future Energy Skills Hub is something that we're trying to pull together, and we're working with partners, and it isn't just that core partnership, there are other people within this kind of footprint in terms of energy transition, so making sure all of that is aligned to make sure we can deliver those hydrogen skills. Some of that will be new skills and it will be new pathways, but a lot of that is existing engineering, construction and even digital pathways, and making sure that those courses are adapting and evolving over time to ensure that these new technologies are built into them. So we'll be looking at some detailed feasibility over the next 12 months to make sure we're really clear on the pace, the take up and the sectors which are most likely to adopt hydrogen as their future fuel, and what their skills needs will be to make sure we're fully aligned. If we can have that next slide, please. That alignment's really important because the take up of hydrogen, when you look at this is something that came out of Liverpool City region, but it's very applicable here. When we're thinking about hydrogen take up, you've got those elements around transition, actually building the infrastructure to enable us to have hydrogen in the region, which in itself takes a lot of thinking and planning. But then as you progress down the line, it's then how will organisations then take that hydrogen and use it within their own processes. And there are lots of ways, and we've just heard from David at Forterra about how they're thinking of using it. Essentially, any processes which require low continuous heat or very intensive heat sources, high energy propulsion or long distance propulsion where electricity just isn't applicable, and as a direct replacement for gas in direct energy production, central heating, plant engines, those sorts of things. These are all areas where we expect hydrogen to play a big part, and it will have skills demand in terms of those businesses that are taking that up. If we have the next slide, please. So we know that there's going to be some core thinking around leadership that's needed, general upskilling of the region to help understand what hydrogen is going to mean for transition, how it's going to affect business modelling and operations. But around that, there are a whole range of specialist skills that we're going to need to include, not least regulatory compliance in a context of that, and just generally increasing the number of engineers and specialists in a context of national technical undersupply of skilled workforce. But particularly new equipment operation, repair and maintenance, compressed gas management will be really important once this hits, you know, actual usage settings. Next slide, please. So really, just to say, it's a partnership. There are lots of players involved, and this isn't all of them. And we've certainly been talking to the MTI as well about how we can coordinate there and make sure all of this works seamlessly. But essentially, it's getting that pathway right. Which are the lower level skills and when do we need them? Because it's really important that we hit the ground running with people who are skilled, ready to go, but not too early, because what we can't do is give people, you know, the opportunity of work. So talk to us, keep in contact with us, engage with that research when it's happening, so we can make sure that the supply of skills hits the button in terms of the timing that it's required. Next slide, please. And if there are any, if you want to find out more about the Institute of Technology, our website there, our full course list is included in there, and it will be evolving over time. So please keep in touch.
And,
did I do well?
Yep, thank you very, very much. It was excellent. And in that context, you've picked up on one of those key points. It's the pace of technology. It's a challenge for those that are looking to understand where things are as we stand, but there are also those that are looking at, well, in the context of systems, how do you make a system operate rather than just a component? And as a company, we've been in the context of working with material suppliers, and they themselves are not quite sure the technical capabilities of some of those materials. And I'll use the example of a membrane used in the fuel cell. We weren't sure whether it was hydrophilic or hydrophobic. Was it retaining moisture or was it rejecting moisture? Because the balance of plant, therefore, has to change fundamentally once you actually know that. So there are a lot of things that co-join, and there are a lot of skills that are essential. And sometimes you can be ahead of the technology itself, but that's fine. You've still got a whole lot of other areas where you mentioned maintenance, repair, overhaul. It's all critical. It's all necessary. And we will not achieve the objectives quickly and effectively and cost effectively enough if we don't have that blend of skills available. So terrific. And that allows me to hand over then to Lisa Bingley, MIRA Technology Institute, MTI, and to take us through how you operate in conjunction with your partners and how you strategizing around the way in which you would work across the spectrum of the hydrogen sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. So, yep, just going to give you a bit of an oversight to what the MTI is and why we're around. So I'm Lisa Bingley I'm the operations director of the MIRA Technology Institute, which I'll call the MTI from now on, just to stop confusion. But so next slide, sorry. We're a unique collaboration between FE, HE and industry. So we're led by the North Warwickshire and South Leicestershire College, and we're also a partner in that partnership with Hariba MIRA, our industry partner, and the universities of Leicester, Loughborough and Coventry. We were built with funding from the UK government's growth fund via the LLEP, and the MTI has a specialist facility to train the next generation of automotive engineers in the latest automotive technology. So in particular, this it will look at creating specialist skills in emerging technology, looking at electrification, driverless cars, and to ensure a sustainable supply of future technical specialists and engineers for the future. Next slide. Thanks. So why do we need the MTI? The automotive and transport sector has faced and faces the electric future, of course. Rapid development of the autonomous, connected and electric vehicles brings enormous change to our transport systems. And every day in the media, it's filled with stories about electrification, cybersecurity and the latest emissions technology. And we've seen the launch of several projects in our areas of focusing on testing and development of these technologies alone. And, you're seeing them on the streets now. And there's a real and urgent need for skills in these areas. Next slide. So our mission and vision at the MTI is to be a centre of excellence for training in this sector. We hope to deliver specialist skills in the automotive sector and beyond in emerging technology to create relevant and bespoke courses for industry with industry. Since it's opened its doors, the MTI has welcomed over 50,000 students and delegates. That's in 5 years. This is almost over 4,000 studying for accredited qualifications, and almost 900 apprenticeships at all levels have come through the MTI. We have had more than 18,000 automotive professionals taken part in professional development activities at the MTI in the first 5 years. So very successful so far. Next slide, please. So the MTI is a purpose-built centre for automotive offering training. It offers accredited programmes from level 1s to level 8. So you can see we've got a bespoke skills escalator. So you can start at the bottom or any point along the journey and finish at the top. Can't say how long it would take, but you can do it. We develop bespoke training and commercial courses, and we have talented apprenticeships right through to chartered engineers. Importantly, the MTI is an employer-led, and it's essential that we continue to work with industry and ensure that the training and the qualifications that we develop specifically address their needs. A quick flash of our courses, but you can pop to the next slide. I just wanted to give you a quick, and also the courses that I flashed up then are all available on the website, so you can go and have a look at that. Yeah, they're all available on the website. You can have a look at those, and they're constantly evolving. They're constantly being updated. It's not on a term system at all, because we're working with industry. We constantly update, and we can develop courses literally on request. Sorry, next slide. So this is a case study that I just wanted to highlight to you. We are working currently together with our partners to develop courses for industry, and this is one in particular we're doing and very successfully. We've had over 600 delegates through already on this course, where we've developed the fundamentals part of electrification for JLR's staff. So all of the mechanical engineers need obviously converting to electronics for their new iPace. And this course is the starter for 10 to get them on that journey. There's more of the journey, and they do that with our partners, but it's been a very successful course to date. Sorry, next slide. So we're focusing today on hydrogen, so I'm highlighting our new hydrogen, our current and new hydrogen courses. So we've got a whole selection of hydrogen courses. We've been lucky enough to receive funding from Local Schools Development Fund, and we've been able to expand our equipment. So we have the first of its kind in some demonstration kit. You can see in the pictures where we've developed some hydrogen technology to view and help us teach. And our hydrogen courses are being developed in the partnership with industry and the awarding bodies to ensure the relevance and develop the skills needed in this area. We go from basic levels, to understand how a fuel cell works, right up to the impact of world on logistics and commercial transport. So quite a range, and all very relevant in our current atmosphere. Next slide, please. So Sarah's already talked about the MIRA Technology Park, and I just wanted to point out, that's where we are on the park, and in those lovely pictures that she flashed up earlier, we're along with 40 other companies, or plus 40 other companies on the site. And that's very relevant because we're a training centre with all of those very relevant companies on our doorstep, which means when we develop the training, we're also involving those companies and those facilities within our training, and we have them on site. So we're ahead of the game, as it were. We've got industry on site that we can link to straight away. Yeah, we can drop to the next slide. So world-class facility, we've got 15 flexible classrooms, 3 workshops. We have working pods on site in our open spaces, and we have a Costa open to the public with charge points and free parking. So, which is quite important these days. Our conference room can hold up to 100 people, and we regularly run engineering events here. So, we have industry training with industry on site. So it makes for a very professional atmosphere within the training area. And just so why do we need an MTI? Because there's no quick fix to the issue of skills gaps, because developing talented individuals takes time. Doesn't it? We've been talking about this a long time. MTI students are able to access automotive training at any level, whether they're starting at the ground level or they needed higher level qualifications. So, we can focus on upskilling here. One of the key benefits to the automotive industry is that for the first time, these skills can be acquired via a single collaborative organisation. This grouping, this collaborative project that we've got here doesn't exist anywhere else. So we can do all levels. And we've got facilities alongside some of the world-leading automotive manufacturers. So we provide significant opportunity to transform skills and supply to industry, which gives us a real chance to make a step change in the future productivity of the industry's local, regional and global atmosphere. So, there's a lot we can affect. We firmly believe that the MTI represents the future of technical and skills training for the UK and hopefully globally. And there's no doubt that this project will not be a success unless because it relies without industry, because it relies on the employers taking advantage of this fantastic opportunity and to exploit it to its fullest. We need everybody to integrate with us and to work with us and develop the courses in collaboration with us. So that's my calling. If I'm going to call to action at anybody, it's staying in touch and talking to us about what we can do to help and where we can go with it. So thank you for giving me the time to literally speed through that.
Thank you, Lisa.
And thank you very much to you, Lisa. In that context, we're now moving over to the panel session. This is a wider session. It's including Hydex, the hydrogen development and knowledge exchange. So, Catherine, you're covering that, and I think from the North Warwickshire, South Leicestershire College, Craig, you'll be covering that as well. And I'm going to say, have we got I have a question I'm going to put to the panel as a whole, as it has been kind of touched on, but not fully specified. It's that safety question. Hydrogen is often seen as a safety challenge, and we have that context of conventional vehicles, car park fires and so on, and those classic cases that have been a couple of years ago and just recently at Luton Airport, a whole car park, open air car park, taken out, 1,400 vehicles in one case. How do you blend in that safety knowledge of, we know that safety is a problem even with conventional fuels. There's it's about 100,000 vehicle fires per year. So we're against the background of that happening on a day-to-day basis, but it doesn't get noticed per se. But the moment it's talked about as hydrogen, it's considered to be potentially catastrophic. Do you do it as unique safety assessment, or do you blend it into everything that you do? So that's a broader sector challenge question. And I think, David, you talked about safety clearly, but it was also in your risk register. So it's a matter of being aware of it and how you manage it. Perhaps, Will, given that you're talking about the entire sector and the gamut of the different activities there, is it top of the list or is it embedded?
Just when I thought we were becoming friends, Dennis. So the honest answer is we don't know all the answers to which bits of the tech are safe in which environments yet. However, I mentioned very briefly in my slides some work that Loughborough and Nottingham Unis are doing around hydrogen storage, and that's actually in partnership with the Health and Safety Executive and with oh good grief, the guys up in Buxton. Someone help me.
Yeah, I know who you mean, but I don't know their technology.
It'll come back. But essentially, the people who are going to be the regulators for hydrogen, are deeply involved in this work. So it goes back to your point about pace. We need that regulatory work to go at a faster pace, frankly, don't we, than the R&D does, because we need the safety regs to be in place before the before things get rolled out. And we also, yet again, comes back to skills. We need people who are prepared to leave the industry and go and join people like the regulators to make sure that, you know, that those guys have got the requisite up-to-date skills in an environment that's changing very quickly. Another interesting bit of work that's happening in partnership with the airport and Midlands Connect is around hydrogen as a potential for not just aviation but ground operations at the airport. And again, that's, you can imagine the safety concerns about putting, you know, an explosive substance next to lots of other explosive substances is mind-boggling, but that it is happening. So I kind of say, watch this space. It's an issue that the industry is alive to, but we wouldn't say we've cracked it by any means.
Yeah. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to come in for a second. I just mentioned that having done some work with East Midlands Airport and talking about hydrogen, they said, well, look, we've got so much very volatile aviation fuel sitting around in our tanks. You think we're worried about a bit of hydrogen? No, we know it needs to be dealt with. We will deal with it. But Sarah, how do you look at that?
Yeah, no, I mean, our whole premise is making journeys safer, cleaner, smarter, and exactly as you've said, it's kind of it's partly educating the public, I think, around hydrogen as a fuel, and as you said, around I guess why, you know, fuels in general and the level of concern around hydrogen. We actually talked about that at our event held at the MTI yesterday, because it's an interesting dynamic when you're talking a lot about hydrogen for use in commercial vehicles. Obviously, that's a different argument to necessarily talking about hydrogen to the public. So, but equally, you need both, because actually, if you've got these big distribution centres, whether they be at the airport or you know, refueling centres, wherever they are, you know, they're not going to get planning if the public doesn't understand what's happening there. So yeah, I think we've got a responsibility in terms of how we talk about that. But as Will said, also all being transparent about the work that you know that we're doing at the technology park to ensure that hydrogen is safe and all the requirements there, but also how we're then working with the regulators and kind of evolving that process. And it's really similar to what we're doing with connected autonomous vehicles as well, to be honest, because that's a kind of similar area. There's a lot around public education that needs to be done. There's a lot around the regulation and the testing that needs to be agreed. So yeah, it's brilliant that we're having this conversation, and actually from an East Midlands perspective, that we've got all the pieces of the puzzle really to kind of help address that safety challenge.
Thank you. Rachel, you were nodding there, and I think you're broadly in agreement with that perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're at a really interesting point in time where there are things happening nationally, and we're almost at when it comes to the safety elements, it's quite iterative at the minute, which seems like the wrong word, but the HSE, the British Standards Institute, you know, they're working together to identify the standards that we need to be operating at within different sectors. So really understanding where take-up is going to be in the East Midlands and making sure we're prepared for that. But Sarah's absolutely right, that leadership piece, actually, and when I'd put leadership on here, but it really is, it's about, you know, who in planning understands hydrogen, who in economic development understands hydrogen, who in marketing understands hydrogen, so that when we're having that communication with the sort of wider area and the population, that we're all on the same page and we understand the benefits as well as how we mitigate any challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. And Claire.
Thank you very much. I'm just chipping in with a question that came from the chat, thanks to Anna Parr. So she has asked, as an adult education college with careers guidance service, very interested to know what level and subject of skills and qualification you are expecting people to already have before accessing either of the fantastic range of professional education offered by the academies that are presenting here, and additionally those requirements to apply for entry levels within the industry.
Who wants to go first?
Put that over to, yes, and I think, is that in the context, perhaps, Lisa, of the courses you were doing to take mechanical trained engineers to become electrical, given that you're talking about the fact that a fuel cell provides electrical power? You also need batteries. You've become a hybridized system in some forms, but a lot of it is electrical rather than mechanical.
I think what she's asking is what sort of level is required to get into those courses, and we offer courses literally at every level. You can come and do an awareness and behaviours course straight away without any qualifications. I think I'd like to bring Craig in here actually, because he can talk to us literally about if we can focus on the hydrogen stuff and the jobs that are around, and he can also focus on the JLR thing before Rachel comes in.
Okay,
yeah, so the JLR offer that we've got at the MCI offers there's no entry level there, so it's a bespoke course that we developed with JLR, and they had their own internal entry requirements, so ensure that they have achieved minimum safety awareness course level around electric vehicles. So they didn't actually have to have a accredited qualification to start the course, but they did some internal certification for training for that, just to make sure they're aware of the dangers around electric vehicles when working around them. With the hydrogen, again, we're starting at our entry level really, so level 1 courses at the moment, and we will be developing level 3 courses as we move into hydrogen a bit more. But at the moment, we're literally level 1, so it's awareness of hydrogen and the dangers around them, safety requirements, and yeah, really that awareness level of the risks involved around working with hydrogen, compressed gas, and the electrification part of that after the fuel cell.
Thank you. Will, you had a further point?
Yeah, thank you. And it's just to set this hydrogen conversation in a slightly wider context, and that's obviously with my East Midlands hydrogen hat on, I champion hydrogen wherever I can, but you know, with the caveat that we know it's not the solution for every place in every sector. But having put that slide on earlier that shows the unique assets this region's got for hydrogen, it's also got unique assets globally for nuclear fission, when you think about Rolls-Royce and the cluster around Derby, and nuclear fusion with the big investment up in Nottinghamshire. So between the 3 counties, we've got 3 of the biggest, you know, future green energy techs covered. But of course, trying to develop all 3 of those at the same time is going to require an awful lot of partnership working of a duration and depth that we've never managed as a region before, because, you know, we could consistently trip over ourselves with politics, don't we? But think the incredible opportunities across those 3 sectors are amazing, and 2/3 of it probably are in common, because fission, fusion, and hydrogen are all going to need project managers and engineers and maintenance people. Actually, it's at the top level where you need to decide if you want to be a fission, fusion, or hydrogen specialist. So that point that was made about the pathways is absolutely crucial. We need to get them worked out, constantly evolved, but into the consciousness of the schools, the colleges, the businesses, so we can make sure people are making those smart decisions early in their education and in their careers, so they end up in the right pathway for them and selfishly for us as an economic region.
Thank you. Anna, are you adding, or you bringing?
Oh yes, I was. It really, Will sort of said it actually, because it was just a couple of people in the chat. I think they're looking at those wider, that diversification, how we can get entry, you know, young people and adults who are perhaps far from the labour market interested in hydrogen, and Will sort of has already said. But I was going to ask about apprenticeships in hydrogen. Do you know where we are with those? Or is that difficult?
So I can sort of make a comment on that, and so probably can Rachel. But hydrogen as a subject is part of it. It's not on its own. You can't do an apprenticeship in just hydrogen. You do it in auto care, for instance, and you take on all about cars, and it's part of it. So it's integrated and has been integrated. There's still some more things to go. You know, the IFATE haven't pulled in all the standards, and all the standards aren't up to date with the latest technology as yet, but we know that takes time to pull it in, but we're starting to develop it and add it in. So yes, as part of the current courses and standards that are available, it will get integrated in, but there's not a standalone, except for the the appreciation courses and stuff.
Yeah. And just to echo that, which is exactly what I was going to say, we are not envisaging, with the exception of, you know, that kind of leadership piece and supporting business leaders to make that transition, and also potentially around like regulatory compliance. I think there's possibly some specific standalone there. Actually, what we're looking at is core construction skills, core engineering skills, and making sure those engineers, at whatever level they're at, have the appropriate level of hydrogen awareness to be able to progress their careers. I think the big challenge is really going back to that communication piece, making our population, or, you know, the people around us, aware that there are huge opportunities in these industries locally, and that there are tangible pathways for them to access those opportunities and get and benefit.
Thank you very much. Catherine.
Yeah, just to sort of echo really what's been said around hydrogen as a career isn't necessarily a unique career. It's embedded within lots of existing roles, from leadership to sort of more technical roles. And sort of through Hydex, we've been doing some research in this, and we've done a report with the Midlands Engine around green careers and hydrogen careers. So the link for that should be coming out with the slides. One thing to mention, there's also an organisation called the Hydrogen Skills Alliance, which is looking at the whole hydrogen value chain. It's a national piece of work that's been led by the National Composite Centre and the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, which some of us in this room are taking part in that. So I think for me, it's about making sure that if there are regional areas of focus, we need to get that fed through, because of the nature of the region, the industries are fairly dispersed, and I think there can be a lot of focus on industrial clusters, whereas we perhaps have slightly more dispersed industries, even though we know we've got big demand. So it's making sure that is sort of reflected in the work that's being done, which we're trying to do sort of with the work with the Hydrogen Skills Alliance. So I think I would just echo, we don't see it as a hydrogen career. There's lots of careers out there that will have an increased, scaled up amount of hydrogen know-how that becomes embedded, and it's how best to build that in rather than create a whole separate thing that needs to be it will be integrated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Craig, you were looking to add a further point, was it?
Yeah, so I put my hand back now. I think Lisa and Rachel kind of covered what I was gonna talk about anyway, so yeah, it's fine.
Okay, and I see one more hand up. I can't see who it is though.
Hi, Dennis. It's myself, Mary Louise Harrison.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, there you are. Yes.
Yes, thank you. As the low carbon lead for the Leicester and Leicestershire Enterprise Partnership, I've been working for a long time, particularly with Will and others around the hydrogen agenda, plus as well, as Will quite rightly pointed out, there are many other technologies out there. You know, my role has been to how can I best position Leicester and Leicestershire in this new green revolution, and to reduce carbon emissions within Leicester and Leicestershire. But my question really is, it comes from sort of what Will was saying about the need for leadership and the need for partnership working. And then also what Catherine referred to around the sort of, you know, it's quite dispersed. So I was just sort of curious as to what everyone's thoughts are with the demise with the moving of LEPs and the withdrawal of support by government. Where do they see that leadership and partnership role coming from in the future?
And that is a very interesting question. Will, would you care to have a reflection on that?
Dennis, what have I done to you? No, it's a really good challenge, and Mary Lou and I have been kind of co-conspirators in this whole East Midlands hydrogen thing for a while. My view, and it's kind of deliberately naive, is it's got to come from the private sector. Yeah. We have a reputation in the East Midlands in government as being the region that can't get its act together because our politicians fall out at the drop of a hat, and then we always end up punching below our weight. I think certainly in the case of hydrogen, which is why East Midlands Hydrogen came about, it's really for the private sector to grab this by the scruff of the neck. It's the private sector that are going to make the majority of the investments. It's the private sector that have got the connections to the big institutional investors. And it's the private sector that are talking to MTI and the Institute of Technology to explain what the needs of businesses are. So, yeah, I know that's much easier said than done, but I think this is one. So if you think back in history to programs like the building of canals and railways, you know, yes, they've been incentivized by government policy to a degree, but essentially the construction of them was handed over to the private sector because they got it done further, faster. Just feels we need to learn some lessons from history.
Right, thoroughly agreed. We're approaching our time. Sarah, a short commentary, and let's see how we go with timing then, Catherine.
Yes,
Sarah,
I'll be brief because, yeah, I mean, I agree with Will, and I think what we need to do as the private sector is not worry about the red lines that governments of various levels like to draw. We've got the East Midlands Freeport. Will and I have been on several of their calls over the last week, talking about lots of different things, but obviously hydrogen was a particularly key part of that. We've got the East Midlands Combined Authority coming online, the mayoral elections. Let's use that opportunity to galvanise all the stakeholders and not worry too much about where the political lines are drawn.
Thank you very much. Catherine, last word to you then.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something that no one can be too precious about. We all need to work together in partnership. I think there's a big role for universities in the convening power that we have to bring in, you know, for example, through things like the Institute of Technology, working with the partners that we have, for example, on our campuses, on our science and enterprise parks, such as Intelligent Energy. So I think that there is a real, you know, there's a real drive to just all collaborate, because that way we will get to the point where we need to get to as quickly as we can. I think it's happening quite organically. We need to be pretty agile, and so we just need to keep working and communicating and building these partnerships and events like this, just keeping everyone up to date with what's going on, really.
Thank you very much. And on which note, it's my pleasure to start and draw things to a close for today. Before doing so, and just I think I have to add a very significant note of gratitude and thanks to Anna and to Claire and all of those that have been involved in arranging this. This is about skills. This is about looking to the future. It's looking at one of the technologies and recognizing that, yes, if you're not doing it from an industrial perspective, then you're not doing the pull through. So you really need to pull the technologies through, because you've got applications, you've got demand for it. You're trying to understand how you resolve problems. Keep it dynamic and stay slightly ahead of the curve, because you pull through. And that therefore means that the role, the inclusion on the skill side is absolutely critical, because as a business, as an enterprise looking to come up with a solution, you may think this is exactly the right thing to do, but it's only you've got the right skills and the right capability in your team that you can actually deliver against it. So in that particular context, I thought, looking at how we're going to approach today's event, how we're going to get across the messages and make it more applicable for the East Midlands. I think we've done that, and I would actually say, and it's been mentioned, we put it forward a couple of times, so much is already here. You've got that wider collective, you've got that momentum that is already happening, and then if you add those other entities, Rolls-Royce, Alstom, entities that are not that far away from where we've been discussing and have been involved in some of those technology activities and developments, the cluster has been formed. Now it just needs that continued momentum, and the question in terms of how it needs to relate to government, regulators and others. I think the relationships are there and have already been formed. So continue with it is the only obvious answer. And by the way, we'll, as a company in the 21 years of operation, hydrogen safety has been well and truly respected and given plenty of caution, but we've had only one minor incident in those 21 years. So the safety side is not a big challenge. I think it can be dealt with. And so thank you to all. Thank you to all of those that have been involved as listening in, testing, looking for solutions and answers. Hopefully, as this particular group has shown, there's a lot out there. There's a lot that can be achieved and will, I'm sure, be achieved over time. Thank you very much. And again, thank you, Anna, for setting